After a 3-month Cold War with my childhood sweetheart, I posted on my moments. I got married. From now on, I'm officially together. Everyone in the friend group is sending wild blessings. They say our childhood sweethearts finally transitioned from school uniform to wedding dress. Just as the atmosphere in the group was lively, I added the beautiful mature woman professor to the group. That was a misunderstanding. This is my wife. The originally lively group instantly froze. 3 days ago, while I was tidying up the wedding house, I accidentally broke the cup that her unattainable object of affection had given her. I hesitated for a moment. I took a picture of the shattered porcelain. I sent it to my fiancée, Luo Yuding. Luo Yuding replied to my message. She said she was waiting at home. I looked at my wound, which was still bleeding. I didn't expect the injury to be so serious. If I'd known, I wouldn't have rushed things. 15 minutes later, Luo Yuding returned. She saw the broken cup shards on the floor and her expression darkened. Security guard Lu Xian. Facing Luo Ting, I couldn't help but soften in the noise. It was my fault for accidentally knocking it to the ground. Luo Yuding's chest rose and fell as she breathed rapidly. She held back her anger and pointed at the shards on the ground. The anger was palpable. Pick it up. It was angering. I didn't expect she would get angry with me because of the cup her ex gave her. I opened my palm and looked at her, saying, I just cut my hand. I'll go put on a band-aid first. She didn't look and her voice remained the same cold tone as she said, I told you to pick it up. Did you not hear me? I held Luo Yuding's hand that hung by her side. How about I get you a new one? Luo Yuding shook off my hand. Lu Xian, you're not a careless person. You wouldn't do it on purpose, right? Hearing this, my heart ached and emotions flooded in. One after another. Do you really need to be angry with me? Hearing this, Luo Yuding could no longer contain her anger. It's easy to say. Words are light. You know this cup. She didn't continue speaking. Pick it up and glue it back for me. When she said this, the blood in my body seemed to freeze. So, I am not even as important as the cup his ex gave him. I silently looked at her. Because this is a cup your ex gave you, right? We're both getting married. Are you really going to keep his things for a lifetime? What I shattered was not just a cup, but the connection between you and her. So, you're angry with me. A crisp slap echoed. Luo Yuding slapped me hard. My head turned to one side. My mind was blank, and my ears buzzed. Luo Yuding's body temperature dropped to freezing point. Her hands trembled slightly, feeling numb, and she let out a low growl. I looked at her with disappointment. Am I in the wrong? Mei has grown taller. After paying, I turned and left. Luo Yuding squatted down to pick up the white porcelain shards on the ground. She noticed that the hand that slapped me was still feeling numb. She was flustered and troubled. Suddenly, she smashed the shard she had picked up onto the ground. The already broken porcelain shattered even more. I ran out. I was running so fast that I tripped and fell. My palms and knees scraped the ground, oozing blood. I quickly got back up. Right now, I just want to leave here quickly. I brushed past a woman with an elegant figure. Don't hurry to leave. The woman took in the whole scene just now. She glanced down at the keys left on the ground. Just as she was about to remind someone. By the time she turned, I had already driven away. Only the taillights were left behind. I returned home and stood at the door, rummaging through all my pockets. There wasn't even a trace of the key. I had it at the door. The left side of my face still felt a bit numb. But I felt worse inside. After a moment of recovery, I planned to go back to look for the key. It might have fallen out when I fell earlier. The door. To the community entrance. Suddenly, a woman blocked my way. I didn't even get a good look at what the woman in front of me looked like. I hoarsely said something. I don't need a sales pitch. After saying that, I prepared to walk around the person in front of me. Then, the woman reached out her hand. The thing you lost on West Road. In her palm lay a key. I stopped and looked at the woman in front of me. She was very beautiful. I even felt that she was more beautiful than Luo Yuding. She had a tall figure and a somewhat aloof demeanor. She belonged to that elegant and sophisticated older sister type. The woman's gaze also fell on my face. When she saw my face, there seemed to be a moment of distraction. I took the key. I looked down and thanked her. Thank you. Could you please bring it over? As I spoke, I took out my phone. I'll cover your gas money. The woman waved her hand. No need. A chance encounter. She knew that looking at me like this was rather impolite. She immediately averted her gaze. Then she turned and left. I stayed home and slept for 2 days. My phone was out of reach for 2 days as well. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, I recovered. I lay in bed without any strength at all. I forced myself to get up from bed. Good brother returned. He was about to speak to me. Seeing me so haggard and pale, he frowned and asked with concern. I quietly made way for him. But I didn't answer the question. Nor did I rush to ask about the situation. He made me a bowl of cooked noodles. After I finished eating, he asked again. What exactly happened? I looked at him sadly and said. It's about Luo Yuding, Lu Ting. I accidentally broke the cup her ex gave her when I went to her house. She slapped me. We've grown up together since childhood. No matter what, she wouldn't hit back. I was silent for a moment and said. It's just that. What a level of anger. The anger just surged up. Upon hearing this, the anger built up. I've heard you two are getting married. Getting the marriage certificate is probably a recent thing too. Who would have thought it would turn out like this? After saying that, he noticed the scrape on my knee. What happened to you? I lay sideways on the sofa with my eyes closed and said. I accidentally fell. A bit. After I fell asleep, the house opened. Yu left my house. Then he called Chu Wanner. Soon, Zhang Yu arrived at Hepburn Bar. After entering, he took something from the counter. He walked in with a few strides to the private room inside. He can be considered a regular here. The management knows him well. Seeing him in this fighting stance, no one dared to stop him. Zhang Yu pushed open the door to the private room. He threw the whole bottle towards the floor by Luo Yuding. It shattered into pieces at her feet. Chu Wanner gasped. She stood between Zhang Yu and Luo Yuding. What's bothering you today? Zhang Yu glared at Luo Yuding with a cold expression. You asked. Luo Yuding emptied the drink in her cup. She squeezed her right hand until the knuckles turned white. The memory of hitting Lu Xian that day is very clear. Chu Wanner turned to look at Luo Yuding. Did you really hit Lu Xian? No wonder you've been looking for me to drink these past few days. The four of them are childhood sweethearts. The four of them are quite close. Their parents get along well too. Luo Yuding released her right hand. She weakly said this. Zhang Yu shot her a glance. Aren't you going to check yourself? Upon hearing this, Luo Yuding slowly closed her eyes. Let him calm down. I need to calm down a bit too. Let's go later. Zhang Yu suddenly chuckled briefly and nodded. After saying that, he turned and left. He glanced at Chu Wanner as he exited the private room. Chu Wanner swallowed and spoke to Luo Yuding. Otherwise, Zhang Yu will get mad at me. Otherwise, it's frustrating. When I woke up, I smelled a fragrance wafting through the air. Sounds came from the kitchen. It might be Zhang Yu who has arrived. Chu Wanner served the last dish of steamed fish on the table. Xian, you're awake. I rubbed my tired, swollen eyes. Wanner, you're here too. Chu Wanner saw my slightly swollen face, thinking about how ruthless Luo Yuding was. But she didn't mention anything about Luo Yuding and chuckled softly. Afraid that Zhang Yu might have poisoned you. After the meal, I was the only one eating quietly. Chu Wanner and Zhang Yu only had a few bites. They watched me the whole time. After finishing the meal, I took out a small blue velvet box. I placed the box next to Chu Wanner's hand. Please take the engagement bracelet from the Luo family to her. Looking at the bracelet in front of her, Chu Wanner asked, You've liked her for so many years. Can you really just cut it off like that? Upon hearing this, I touched the left side of my face. No, I can't. But she woke me up. If it weren't for that slap, I could still comfort myself. That was just a past. With this slap, all my hopes for her were shattered. Zhang Yu and Chu Wanner are both my good friends. This romantic matter is not something they can interfere with. After they left, I closed the door and took a deep breath. Then I took out my phone. I powered it on. Zhang Yu sent me a lot of messages. Besides Zhang Yu, the messages were from the coffee shop staff. I paused my finger on the pinned name. Dear wife. I returned 2 little love emojis. Luo Yuding didn't send me a single message. The more I looked at this note, the more ironic it became. I immediately clicked to unfriend. I cleaned out all the photos of Luo Yuding from my study. I didn't expect I could sort out so many things myself. I went to the office early the next morning. After graduation, I opened a really charming coffee shop. Because I got up early, I brought breakfast for the staff at the shop. I showed up at the coffee shop 3 days after losing contact. The staff were quite surprised and all greeted me. Boss, where have you been these past 2 days? I sent you messages, but you didn't reply. I joked to myself. I broke up with my girlfriend. The staff were all stunned. The boss had even said he would bring them wedding candy when he got married. But I didn't say it out loud. Not coming out. One of the boys smiled at me. Boss, don't be sad. That beautiful woman might come to our shop today since it's Wednesday. Just look at how refreshed the beauty looks. I let out a soft laugh. What beauty website? Thinking about her so much. The other staff started chattering with me too. There's a very beautiful woman who comes to the shop 3 times a week. She always arrives promptly at 8. She comes on fixed days, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday. This piqued my curiosity. What kind of beauty makes them remember so clearly? I was curious but didn't have much interest. I ordered a cup of coffee and found a seat in the corner. I looked toward the pedestrians outside the glass window. Suddenly, I saw a familiar woman. At that moment, the staff placed my coffee on the table. They also looked out the window with some excitement. Boss, look, hurry up and look. It's her. Isn't she beautiful? I was slightly taken aback upon hearing that. It's her. The person who delivered the key to me downstairs that day. That day, she only said, a chance encounter. Since we've met again, it must be fate. Thinking of this, I said to the staff. Wait, I'll treat her to a cup of coffee. The staff leaned in with a mischievous smile and said to me. Boss, you're pretty good at this. I chuckled helplessly. Seeing her come in from outside, I immediately stood up and followed her. After she placed her order, when she was about to open the payment code, I first scanned the payment code at the register. Payment successful. The staff saw it was their boss. They stifled a laugh, pretended to know nothing, and just said, Please wait a moment. The woman paused with her hand holding the phone. She glanced at the man standing next to her. It's him. I smiled lightly. We meet again. Thank you for delivering the key to me that day. After saying that, she sat back in her original seat. I am very grateful to her. When I was in a terrible mood, I felt the kindness of a stranger. The woman's gaze followed me until I sat down. At that moment, a staff member's voice reached her ear. Miss, here is your coffee, please take it. The woman took the coffee and walked to my table. Before she spoke, I began to speak. Don't you dare say something like, give me my money back. The woman raised her lips slightly. Thank you for the coffee. After saying that, she turned and left. It had been busy all afternoon. The cafe closes at 9 in the evening. Just as I was organizing the cups and saucers, someone came back through the door. Sorry, our store is about to close. I looked up and froze. It was Luo Yuding. Luo Yuding. She held a small blue square box in her hand. It was the one I asked Chu Wanner to bring back for her. Luo Yuding's expression was icy. She stared at me intensely. I pretended to be calm. Slowly placed the cup in the display case. She slammed the small box directly onto the bar. Lu Xian. What do you mean by returning this to me? I replied coldly. Don't you understand what I mean? I don't want to marry you anymore. Luo Yuthing's face turned red. Over something so trivial. You and I are fighting. Lu Xian, when did you become so unreasonable? I don't know if she was revealing her true self or just speaking out of anger. I can't take such words in at all right now. I definitely won't dig deeper to understand her words. Is this a small matter? Then let me ask you, what is a big deal? The more I spoke, the less I could control my emotions. My feelings for her are worthless. In the end, she said it was all trivial. Looking at Luo Yuthing's face, it looked like it could drip water. I scoffed. I forcefully threw that blue box on the table out the door. I stared at Luo Yuting as she pointed towards the door. History. Get the hell out of here. The woman at the door, who was just about to enter, paused and actually stopped at the entrance. And Luo Yuting, who had never been told to leave. Time really did get to me, gritting my teeth in anger. I ran all the way here to see how injured you are. I'm such a fool. After saying that, she left the cafe without looking back. She picked up the blue box at the door and threw it into the trash bin. The woman still standing at the door witnessed yet another incident involving me. The last time she saw me was when I lost my keys. This time, it was another argument with my girlfriend. Maybe I should consider her my ex now. The woman slowly walked in. Excuse me, is there any coffee left? She didn't finish her sentence. Seeing me in front of her, I silently lowered my head and didn't react. She was just thinking about saying something. Suddenly, my gaze became resolute. I smiled and asked her, what would you like to drink? A beautiful mature woman's voice sounded. A cup of cappuccino. I shook my head at the woman in front of me. We don't have any cappuccinos left. After saying that, I pulled out 2 packets of instant coffee from the drawer. There are still 2 packets of instant coffee left. If you want, I can brew one for you. The woman looked at the instant coffee in my hand and nodded. I made her a cup of instant coffee. I also took out a piece of cake I had prepared to take home, and gave her half of it. Why are you still out this late? The woman took a sip of coffee and said, I just got off work and I'm a bit tired. I wanted to take a chance to see if you were still open. She paused for a moment and continued speaking. I really like the coffee at your shop. Hearing this, I smiled. Thank you for liking it. Then I changed the subject. I haven't asked you what your surname is yet. Sha Yushan wrote a character on the table with her finger. Sha. I learned her last name. I also mentioned my last name on the way. My last name is Lu. Miss Sha. Do you often work until this time at night? Sha Yushan took a sip of instant coffee and furrowed her brows. I was delayed by some last-minute work today. I touched my neck. I suspected it was because she found the instant coffee unpleasant. Seeing that she finished her coffee, I took the cup to wash it. When I returned, the cake on the table. The box had been cleaned up by her. I was just about to say I would close the shop. Suddenly, Sha Yushan spoke up. Excuse me, how do you charge? I smiled. Just a cup of instant coffee. I won't charge you. She frowned and pointed at the half-eaten cake. There's still cake left. Seeing Sha Yushan's displeasure, I said seriously. It's on me. I really appreciate you bringing me the key last time. I was feeling very low that day. You made me feel the kindness that comes from a chance encounter. That's probably the only thing worth being thankful for that day. A chance encounter. Sha Yushan didn't think today could be considered a chance encounter anymore. I closed the shop door. Sha Yushan threw the trash into the bin. I caught a glimpse of the blue velvet square box inside, but said nothing. I looked at Sha Yushan and asked aloud, Miss Sha, how are you getting back? Sha Yushan pressed the car key. The Xiaomi SU7 across the street flashed its lights twice. Across the street. I nodded and waved to Sha Yushan. Then please be careful on your way. As Sha Yushan was about to leave, she stood by the car door and said 2 things to me. Don't lose yourself because of love. Love isn't everything in life. She hadn't wanted to say that. Moreover, the other person wouldn't take it in anyway. But today she couldn't help but meddle in someone else's affairs. I returned from the cafe, took a shower, and lay exhausted on the bed. I took out my phone and glanced at it. Someone sent me a message half an hour ago. There were 7 or 8 messages and some missed calls. I leaned over the bed and called Zhang Yu back. Zhang Yu's concerned voice came through. Hey, where are you? Did she come to apologize to you? I recalled what happened tonight and rubbed my forehead. She didn't come to apologize at all. She came to make trouble for me. She said hitting me is a minor issue. She said I was being unreasonable. We're completely done for. Zhang Yu didn't expect Luo Yuting to say something like that. She usually seems so aloof. But she can be very impulsive about her ex. After a pause, he asked again. Are you okay? I can't really describe how I'm feeling right now. I feel pathetic for having liked her for so many years. I should be sad about this. But Miss Shaw's arrival disrupted my sad thoughts. Even though she saw me in such a sorry state. But she didn't mention it at all. Indeed, when you're sad, you need someone to chat with. To avoid overthinking. I'm fine. The more she hurts me, the faster I become clear-headed. Maybe after a few more times, I can handle it calmly. Zhang Yu laughed on the other end of the call. I knew the things you decided wouldn't change. We chatted for a bit and then hung up. I pressed my ears a few thousand times. I remembered I haven't taken the medicine prescribed for today. I immediately got up to grab a cup of warm water. On the other side, at the Hepburn bar, Chu Wanner patted her close friend's back and asked, Didn't you go to apologize? Xian hasn't forgiven you. Luo Yuding kept drinking cup after cup. Chu Wanner stopped her for a moment. Don't just drink. Tell me, what's really going on? Make me happy. Luo Yuding ignored her sarcastic remarks and said directly, I went to confront him about why he returned the items. As long as he spoke sweetly like before. Could I have said some things I shouldn't have out of anger? He even told me to get lost. Chu Wanner looked at her speechlessly. I hit him. And he still wants to sweet talk you. I think you're just spoiled by Xian. You didn't even try to coax him back. Actually, Chu Wanner knew that Luo Yuding was just saying it out of anger. But it's true that she really did hit him. Lu Xian and Zhang Yu are the same type of people who can hang out together. One wears his emotions on his sleeve, while the other hides them away. In any case, they're both the type to make a scene and then get eliminated. Luo Yuding muttered with a flushed face. I thought a few days would help him calm down. I thought we could reconcile today. I was ready to go get our marriage license as planned. It seems like we need to postpone our plans. Chu Wanner burst into laughter upon hearing this. Come on now. His face was so red after you hit him. Don't even talk about marriage. Not breaking up would be good enough. Luo Yuding shook her head and said, he won't. I know how much he likes me. This line seems unclear and may be incorrect. If provided context or correction, I can help translate. This line also appears unclear and may be incorrect. Similar to above, please provide context or correction for accurate translation. She has something about Luo Yuding that she hasn't told Xian yet. It's not very important, but it's painful. If one day Lu Xian stops liking Luo Yuding, she might finally say it. The next morning at 8 o'clock, I arrived at the cafe early in the morning. To make my day feel more fulfilling. To prevent myself from overthinking things. When I got to the store, one of the female staff members gave me a sly smile. Boss. That beautiful woman from yesterday, wasn't she lovely? Another girl joined in teasing. The boss even paid for her. Seems like she has the boss's approval. Seeing this, I didn't explain either. I thought about who mentioned Miss Shaw yesterday. She comes to the shop every Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And today happens to be Thursday. I leaned on the bar and said to them, since you all say so, then I'll treat her to another cup of coffee today. Upon hearing this, the staff started to cheer. We want some too. Yes, yes. None of us get this treatment. In this atmosphere, my mood improved a lot. I feigned indifference and shrugged. You all make coffee every day. Shouldn't I drink with you? A few staff members pouted and said, no coffee. Boss, you are biased. Hearing this, I laughed out loud. Got it. I'll buy you afternoon tea later. Listening to them praise themselves in various ways, I felt really good. Just based on giving me the key and chatting with me last night, I'm already very thankful to Miss Shaw for these two things. Treating her to a few cups of coffee is something I'm more than happy to do. After chatting with them, the warehouse has just organized the newly delivered goods. At 8:20, Sha Yushan arrived at the shop on time. After placing her order, she showed her payment code. The staff member smiled and said, today's coffee is on our boss. Sha Yushan instinctively glanced towards the table I sat at yesterday. So he is the boss of the shop. Another barista nearby also came over and said with a smile, your looks are even recognized by our boss. Sha Yushan still held up her payment code in front of her. Thank you for your boss's kindness. I appreciate it. This is something I should pay for. The staff member waved his hand and said, next time, wait until our boss is here. You can talk to our boss. Sha Yushan sighed silently in resignation. Is this considered hush money from last night? Now I owe him another cup of coffee. She walked towards the table I sat at yesterday, holding her coffee. She sat there for about 5 minutes, seemingly waiting for me. But I couldn't wait for the person. Left shortly after. I was busy in the back warehouse until 10 o'clock. I was a bit tired before returning to the front. I heard one of the staff say, that beautiful woman unusually sat in the store for a few minutes this morning. She sat in that spot. The staff pointed to that spot in the corner. Then they chuckled. Boss. Is she waiting for you? I followed her direction and looked over. It's the spot I sat in yesterday. I smiled slightly but didn't say anything. I took a few sips from my cup of water. The garbage collector outside emptied all the trash from the bin. I remembered how Luo Yuding threw her bracelet into the trash can yesterday. I was thinking last night that if Luo Yuting really went back in the middle of the night to check the bracelet, would it lead to more entanglement? But Luo Yuding wouldn't do something like that. This time, the argument brought up her ex. She feels wrong. She's still waiting for me to apologize. I smiled. She's just a woman. Just let it go. Miss Shaw is right. Love isn't everything. I've been busy at the shop for the past few days. Although I'm a bit tired, it's also fulfilling. Occasionally, I think about some things regarding Luo Yuding. But she hasn't appeared in front of me these past few days. It's as if she has evaporated. My heart has started to quiet down. It's much better than I imagined. When I was dating her before, I even thought I couldn't live without her. But now that I think about it, that's not the case. By 9 p.m., the cafe was already empty. I turned off the lights and prepared to head home early. I was just about to lock the door. A familiar voice came from behind me. Are you off work? I turned around to see the woman standing behind me. Miss Shaw. Good evening. Sha Yushan replied. Mr. Lu. Good evening. After saying that, she raised her hand and handed the cake to me. I looked at her with confusion. Yes. Sha Yushan smiled and said, I wanted to pay you, but you wouldn't accept it. I was just thinking of buying a cake for you. She naturally knew I was thanking her for her kindness in our chance encounter. But doing this made me feel a bit embarrassed. I smiled as well. Thank you, Miss Shaw. This way, we can consider it all cleared up. Next time, I'll have to make some money off you. After I took the cake, I suddenly wanted to take back what I said. What do you mean by clearing things up? This black swan cake is enough to buy her a drink. So I decided to share this cake right now. Would you like to come in and sit for a while? Sha Yushan politely opened her mouth without refusing. That's a hassle. I turned on the light and opened the package in my hands. I brewed 2 cups of flower tea that just arrived today and handed one to Sha Yushan. I opened the cake box. I have no idea where this swan came from. Seeing me gesture at the swan, Sha Yushan spoke up. Let me do it. After saying that, she took the knife from my hand. With a swift motion, she cut and then plated the cake. While she was cutting the cake, I asked, "Did you just get off work?" Sha Yushan shook her head and said, "However, I had a stock market class this afternoon." I took a bite of the cake. Hearing this, I looked up at her. "Did you come specifically to bring the cake?" Sha Yushan bit her lip, feeling quite conflicted inside. Although she didn't want to admit it, it was indeed true. After a few seconds, she nodded. "I didn't want to send you anything. I couldn't shake off the feeling in my heart. I express my sincere apologies. I'm really sorry. I didn't know you felt this way." Sha Yushan quickly waved her hand. "No need to apologize. I had eaten your cake that day anyway. It's only right for me to return the favor." I lightly curled my lips and changed the topic. "Miss Shaw, are you a teacher?" She nodded in response. "Yes. I'm a university teacher." I nodded. "No wonder you give me a familiar feeling." Sha Yushan looked at me in confusion. I immediately explained. "My dad is also a university teacher. At first glance, he has a serious demeanor. But actually, my dad is quite kind. You are also gentle. You just seem a bit distant." As I was talking, I finished eating the cake on the plate. "I'm a bit full. I can't drink any more of this tea." Sha Yushan was still pondering my impression of her. The cake in front of me hasn't been touched much either. I lowered my head and covered my mouth as I yawned. Seeing this, Sha Yushan said, "I'll tidy up the table." After tidying up, I took the leftover cake with me. I got in the car and rolled down the window towards. Sha Yushan waved her hand from across the street. "Goodbye, Miss Shaw." Sha Yushan replied with a goodbye. Overall, today wasn't bad. If I hadn't run into Luo Yuding outside the community tonight, it would have been even better. I just signaled and was about to drive into the community. Luo Yuding appeared in front of my car. I slammed on the brakes and pulled the car over to the side. I opened the door and got out of the car. We just stood by the roadside like that. Luo Yuding saw me like this today. I was calm, unlike last time when I was agitated. She instantly sighed in relief. "Why did you come back so late?" Luo Yuding's tone was calm. She didn't seem like someone who had been arguing or in conflict at all. For a moment, it felt like we had gone back to the past. But I couldn't act like nothing had happened. "Just got off work?" Luo Yuding reached out to hold my hand. I dodged away. She sensed my distance. But she just took it as me being stubborn. "What's going on? Didn't you used to get off work by 9 at the latest? How come you're just getting home at 10 now?" I replied with a sound of acknowledgement. A friend came over and sat in the shop for a while to chat. Luo Yuding is now completely at ease. She thought I was upset. A smile appeared on her delicate face. She knows that Lu Xian deeply loves her. Even if they have conflicts, it won't last long. Moreover, she knows where to draw the line. Just a little fuss is fine. She pointed to that building where I live. "Let's go to my place for a bit. We're also about to get our marriage certificate." I was considering getting the certificate in the next few days. We won't have to be apart anymore. I looked up in the direction she was pointing. I looked for a few seconds before returning my gaze. Finally, it landed on Luo Yuding. "Forget it." Luo Yuding's delicate body jolted in surprise. "We're both getting married. What do you mean by this?" I looked at Luo Yuding and spoke calmly. "I already made it clear to you last time. I don't want to marry you anymore. Besides, didn't you throw the bracelet in the trash yourself? Since it's already like this, what is the purpose of your visit today?" Upon hearing this, Luo Yuding slightly parted her lips and furrowed her brows. "Didn't you pick the bracelet back up?" I looked at her, somewhat speechless. "You already threw it away. What would I pick it up for? That's really laughable. If you're fine, I'll just leave." I was just about to leave, when Luo Yuding grabbed my wrist with a cold look in her eyes. Ning. Being a bit dramatic is charming, but being too dramatic is boring. After saying that, her beautiful eyes fixed on me. I raised my left hand to swipe at Luo Yuding's face. She reacted quickly, pulling her hand back and stepping back half a step. It only lightly brushed against her face. Luo Yuding's expression was frighteningly cold. "Do you want to hit me?" I chuckled softly. "I just didn't hit anything, did I? Last time, your slap was quite real. Do you think we can still be together after everything that has happened? Why can't you let go of this matter?" Luo Yuding said with righteous indignation. "Wasn't it you who broke my cup first?" Hearing that, I didn't know what to say. I was utterly disappointed in Luo Yuding and couldn't say anything. I felt both ridiculous and sad. What kind of person do I actually like? In the end, I just asked one thing. "Do you really not understand? I don't want to talk to you anymore. Just go away. Don't show up in front of me again. If you're nostalgic, go ahead and continue reminiscing about your ex. Not an ex." After saying that, I went home. Lying in bed, my room was silent. For the first time, I had nothing to say to Luo Yuding. I didn't even want to argue with her anymore. Does she really not understand? Not at all. I think I understand her. The things she said to me were like, it's like a bargaining chip on the negotiation table. Avoiding important content. Magnifying some insignificant things. Luo Yuding knows where she went wrong. She just won't admit it. She wants me to back down first. Then she'll bring it up again. But this time she was wrong. Laying a hand on me is my bottom line. No matter what she does, it's all in vain. I'm standing by the window, looking outside. A suffocating night that takes your breath away. Fortunately, the moon is high in the sky, although it can't illuminate much. But somehow, my heart feels less constricted. The next morning in the hall. I couldn't sleep last night and woke up only at 10. I was woken by a phone call. Groggily reaching for my phone. I squinted my eyes and answered the call. It was a call coming in. It was John calling. "You're still not awake?" I heard that you would be at the coffee shop tomorrow morning. You'll be at the cafe very early in the morning. You'll be busy all day. I didn't see you at the shop today. I turned over. Today, it started to feel different. Zhang Yu suspects that I'm in a bad mood. Maybe it's because of Luo Ting again. I couldn't say it openly, so I had to ask indirectly. Do you want me to bring you lunch? I immediately declined. Seeing that he was silent. Then come out. Let's have lunch together. Chu Wanner has opened a new restaurant. Let's go to her place. I nodded in agreement. Sounds good. I got up immediately. After hanging up, I freshened up and changed my clothes. I grabbed the car keys and rushed to the address that Zhang Yu mentioned. When I arrived, Zhang Yu and Chu Wanner were waiting at the door. I greeted the two of them. I then asked, do you care? Didn't you sleep well last night? I was angry. I couldn't sleep last night. After entering the private room and taking a seat, Chu Wanner looked me up and down. Did Ting Ting go to see you last night? I nodded and then rubbed my temples as I replied. I get a headache just seeing her now. I don't want to say a word to her. She doesn't understand human words. Chu Wanner clicked her tongue. She's waiting for you to continue loving her. I frowned. You don't have to pay attention to her. Chu Wanner smiled helplessly. Did you go to see a doctor before? Does mom know? I shook my head. I didn't go to my mom's hospital. I don't want them to know. Chu Wanner asked again. What if mom and dad ask about you? What about the situation with Luo Yuding? Hearing Chu Wanner's words, I thought for a moment and said, I'll explain when they ask. Chu Wanner lowered her head. Uncle Lu and Aunt Shen. They are extremely satisfied with Luo Yu as their daughter-in-law. Lu Xian is probably going to have a tough battle ahead. When Chu Wanner heard from Zhang Yu, when Luo Yuding hit Lu Xian over a broken cup, I think Luo Yuding's head is filled with nonsense. One response. I changed the subject while eating. Don't mention her. Aren't you guys busy today? If you're not busy, let's go shopping after dinner. Both of them said they weren't busy. Speaking of which, it was about shopping. Actually, it feels like they're just worried about me. In the end, they stuffed my trunk full of things before I went back. I happened to pass by the university town. My parents' house is nearby. Directly drove the car into the community. I called my dad before getting out of the car. Once the call connected, I first asked, Dad, have you gotten home? I'm downstairs in the neighborhood. I want to eat sweet and sour ribs and crispy fried pork tonight. My dad, Lu Tianming, helplessly said, it looks like we won't be able to eat that tonight. I have a few old friends gathering for dinner tonight. But Xian, Mom and I will eat it for you tonight. We'll eat sweet and sour ribs and crispy fried pork. I was at a loss for words. I want to eat too. Lu Tianming smiled helplessly. Alright, I'll make it for you next time. It's almost evening. Just cook for yourself. I hung up the phone. I received a transfer from my dad. The transfer note said, sweet and sour pork ribs and crispy pork. Of course, I deserved to receive it. I drove the car out of the community gate. I happened to pass by the gate of Zhang University. I suddenly saw several handsome guys and beautiful girls walking out of the school gate. I couldn't help but stop the car diagonally across from the school gate and roll down the window. I rested my arms on the window and looked outside. Looking at handsome guys and beautiful girls really lifted my spirits. It's now a little after 4 in the afternoon. I watched for about 7 or 8 minutes as students kept coming and going. Suddenly, I remembered some things from my university days. I was engrossed in my thoughts. Suddenly, a familiar voice reached my ears. Mr. Lu. Hearing this, I quickly turned my head to look at the woman standing in front of the car. It's Miss Shaw. I was taken aback for a moment and pulled my arm back from the window. Miss Shaw, what a coincidence. What are you doing here? Shaw Yushan was about to head back and found this car somewhat familiar. After glancing at the license plate, she confirmed it was me. Shaw Yushan pointed at Zhang University. I'm working here. I turned to look at the school gate and choked up a bit. I see. She looked at me with some confusion. What are you doing here? Hearing this, I instantly felt embarrassed. Could I really tell her I'm here to check out the handsome guys and beautiful girls at their school? I chose to phrase it differently. My parents live nearby. I passed by and saw these students looking quite energetic. I took a longer look. Shaw Yushan followed my gaze. Just then, a male student came out of the school gate. He looked like he hadn't fully woken up. I see. I nodded. That's right. Shaw Yushan looked in the direction of the school gate. It's quite energetic. She changed the subject. Are you going to your parents? I shook my head. My parents went out to eat. I'm going back to cook for myself. I paused and slowly looked at Shaw Yushan. Miss Shaw, want to have a meal together? Shaw Yushan pressed her lips together and silently agreed after 2 seconds. My car is in front. I'll follow you in a moment. Okay. As soon as I finished speaking, suddenly, 2 or 3 mixed voices of men and women came. Goodbye, Professor. I turned to look at the students outside the car window. Coincidentally, the 3 students also looked at me. I suddenly felt a bit embarrassed. Those students had such clear eyes, and they seemed to find it amusing. Shaw Yushan nodded and waved at them. Goodbye. When I started the car to leave, the 3 students were still laughing and waving at me. I forced a polite smile. Before leaving, I overheard those 3 students discussing. This one looks good, and that one looks good too. I slowed down intentionally to wait for Shaw Yushan. I saw her car appear in the rearview mirror. Only then did I accelerate. Just now, I was busy feeling awkward. The students seemed to call her Professor. I looked ahead in surprise. Did I mishear that? Miss Shaw looks to be about the same age as me. Around 26. She became a professor at this age. My dad became a professor at 32. The professor thought it was already impressive enough. Is Miss Shaw really that impressive? Or is she actually in her 30s? She just doesn't look that mature. I'll go home tonight and search for professors in their 20s at Zhang University. Such shocking news. The school must have reported extensively on it. It shouldn't be difficult to find her. I chose a Chinese restaurant that I used to frequent. I've always thought their sweet and sour ribs taste really authentic. I parked the car in the parking space. I got out of the car and waited for Miss Shaw. Shaw Yushan got out of the car. She glanced at the restaurant's name and heard me ask, "Is this place okay?" He nodded and said, "It's fine." Then we entered the restaurant side by side. The waiter seated us at a table by the window. He respectfully handed us the tablet to place our orders. I introduced to Shaw Yushan. "The sweet and sour ribs and the fried pork here are both good." As I said, I checked off those 2 dishes on the tablet. After selecting 4 dishes I liked, I lowered the tablet and let Shaw Yushan choose a few dishes. Shaw Yushan quickly picked the ones she liked. After a while, she also set down the tablet. Once the waiter took note, he said to wait a moment and left. I suddenly felt that Miss Shaw wasn't pretentious at all. Minimalism. She does what needs to be done without saying a word extra. Thinking of this, I asked, "When I was just outside your school gate earlier, I hear them call you professor." Shaw Yushan slightly lifts her beautiful eyes. "Yes. I was just promoted last year." Upon hearing this, I couldn't help but praise. This really broke my perception. It's mealtime right now. Many people are coming and going. The restaurant is gradually becoming lively. After the waiter serves all the dishes, I introduced it to her. "Try their sweet and sour ribs. They are really delicious." Upon hearing this, Shaw Yushan picks up her chopsticks. She picks up a piece of rib and puts it in her mouth. After tasting it, she nods. "Not bad." I pointed to the plate of guo bao ru. "And this guo bao ru." Shaw Yushan's chopsticks turn towards the plate of guo bao ru again. She tries it again and nods. "Not bad." After receiving her affirmation, I raised the corners of my mouth in satisfaction. "I think so too." Then I lowered my head and began to eat seriously. We didn't have much conversation while eating. Occasionally, we exchanged a few words. Miss Shaw is the type of person who doesn't say much but can keep the conversation going. So having a meal together isn't awkward. After finishing our meal, we got up and walked to the front desk. Shaw Yushan took out her phone a step ahead of me. Seeing this, I stopped her. I lightly chuckled and said, "This meal is on my dad." After saying that, I handed over the payment code. Payment successful. After leaving the restaurant, I noticed Shaw Yushan's side and I explained to her. I was supposed to have dinner at my parents' house today. They went out for a gathering. Then they transferred money to me and sent me away. Anyway, I still had a meal. Even if you accompany me for dinner. "Oh right. Thank you for the cake yesterday." Shaw Yushan smiled warmly. "Delicious. Then I thank you for treating me to dinner today." "You're welcome. I'm feeling pretty good right now. The heaviness from last night is gone." I glanced at the time. It was 7 o'clock. So I turned to look at Shaw Yushan. "Miss Shaw, go rest early." Shaw Yushan nodded and said, "Okay. Be careful on the road." I got in the car and waved at her. After watching me drive away, Shaw Yushan asked to get in the car. Just a few minutes ago, she felt someone was watching them. She turned her head to look not far away. The woman standing there looked a bit familiar. The woman who had a conflict with Mr. Liu at the cafe before. She seems to be an ex. She just glanced and then drove away. Luo Yuthing's expression darkened. She came to eat with friends. As soon as she got out of the car, she saw me with a woman she recognized. A strange woman she had seen before came out of the restaurant. Although the two didn't do anything inappropriate, she still felt very unhappy. How did she not know about this friend of mine? They even had a meal together. The friend standing not far away was a bit speechless. "How long have you been standing there watching? That's your soon-to-be husband. Look at him having dinner with someone else. Why don't you just ask him? They won't ignore you anyway." These words pierced directly into Luo Yuthing's heart. "Shut up. Long-term custody." The friend crossed their arms and shrugged. It felt like being shot. Luo Yuting took out her phone and made a call. She called Chu Wanner and immediately asked, "I need to ask you something. Has Xian met any women recently? One that is actually quite pretty." Chu Wanner clicked her tongue lightly. "Have you developed some kind of fantasy? What woman could there be? He just had dinner with us today. He's either working in the shop or sleeping at home. He has no time to meet any woman." Luo Yuting interjected. "I saw it." Chu Wanner responded with an, "Oh. I saw him dining with a woman. He can have dinner with whoever he wants. It's a perfectly normal thing. Did you see them go home together?" "No, that didn't happen." Luo Yuting isn't that upset, though. So she asked, "Who upset you? You're fiery today." Chu Wanner said half-jokingly, "You." Thinking about how Luo Yuting hit Xian over a cup. At least she didn't directly scold her, that's good enough. And here I am, asking her who upset her. But it's quite rare for Lu Xian to have dinner with a woman. But she knows it must be purely innocent. It couldn't be more innocent than that. At least it could provoke Luo Yuting a bit, which is good. Luo Yuting immediately felt irritated. "Alright, I'm hanging up." Chu Wanner had her call ended. She immediately messaged Zhang Yu. Luo Yuting saw Lu Xian dining with another woman. This must be infuriating for him. Zhang Yu replied with a smile. I can already picture Luo Yuthing's sullen face. When I got home, I took a shower. Just as I lay down on the bed, my phone suddenly rang. It was an unknown number. But my first reaction was Luo Yuting. I have nothing to say to Luo Yuting anymore. It turns out that the argument really ended in silence. It even felt chilling. Answering her call would only make me angry at myself for buying it. That number kept calling me incessantly. I neither answered nor hung up, and I sent a message to Chu Wanner. Can you have Luo Yuting call me? I don't want to talk to her. I initially wanted Zhang Yu to talk to Luo Yuting. but I was worried Zhang Yu might do something impulsive, so I'll let Chu Wanner talk to her instead. Chu Wanner replied with some excitement. She smiled. I guess she's here to question you about having dinner with another woman. That'll probably upset her. I stared at the message from Chu Wanner for a while. How could Luo Yuding know that I was eating with someone else? So I asked. How does she know? Chu Wanner replied. I don't know. But when she asked me, it was around 7 o'clock. She probably ran into you during dinner time. Around 7 o'clock. That's exactly when Miss Shaw and I were coming out of the restaurant. Maybe she saw us. If it weren't for Luo Yuding's slightly proud personality, and since we just had a fight, waiting for me to apologize first, she would have charged over to question me. I replied to Chu Wanner. Told her to stop messaging. Chu Wanner replied. Got it. Exiting the chat interface, I prepared to put down my phone, turn off the lights, and go to sleep. Suddenly, I remembered something about Miss Shaw. I opened the search bar. Typed in Zhang Mansion. Just as I typed in Miss Shaw's surname, a name popped up below. Shaw Yushan. I clicked on it. I only saw a photo of her from the back. I concluded that this must be Miss Shaw. There is a special feature about her in the school column. The youngest professor in the Chinese department. By this age, she should be 28 this year. However, I couldn't find a single frontal photo no matter how much I searched. Most are side or back profiles. There isn't much personal information in there. Mostly, it's about her works, academic papers, and publications. I slowed my voice and whispered, Shaw Yushan. She looks very cultured, just like the others. She is a remarkable person. Although I have seen her several times, we haven't even exchanged names. She can be considered a friend from a chance encounter. After finishing Miss Shaw's feature, I turned off my phone. Afraid of being disturbed by calls, I switched my phone to silent. The next morning, I woke up. I got up and made a delicate breakfast. After eating, I headed to the coffee shop. When I arrived at the coffee shop, I found Zhang Yu was also there. She casually sat across from him. Good morning. Zhang Yu pushed a breakfast plate in front of me. I thought you would come to the shop early this morning. Even though I had breakfast already, I still ate Zhang Yu's breakfast twice. I straightened my posture, resting my hands on the table. So yesterday my parents went out for a gathering. I heard that Uncle Lu mentioned at the table the matter of you and Luo Yuding getting married. Zhang Yu knows that Luo Yuding's parents really like Lu Xian. Similarly, my parents also particularly like Luo Yuding. It's quite awkward for something like this to happen now. Hearing this, I waved my hand and said, that was Luo Yuding's fault. That was Luo Yuding's fault. Don't place the blame on me. Let's discuss it when the time comes. Zhang Yu nodded slowly, as if recalling something, and smiled. I planned to sit at that table when I arrived at 8. After saying that, he pointed to the table in the corner near the window. I looked in the direction he was pointing. That was my usual spot. He continued speaking. Guess what? There was a super beautiful woman sitting at that table with a cup of coffee. I have to say, that woman was truly stunning. I'm not exaggerating at all. She looked like a beautiful mature woman with a high IQ. However, she only sat there for 5 minutes. Exactly 5 minutes. Then she left. As soon as I heard his description, I immediately knew who it was. Zhang Yu looked at me in shock. Do you know each other? I nodded and casually told Zhang Yu how I knew her. I had just run out from Luo Yuding's house and tripped at the door. I lost my keys. You have no idea how desperate I was at that moment. Then she brought them to me. I offered to pay her for gas, but she refused. However, she might have seen me getting beat up. She felt sorry for me and came to check on me. I paused for a moment and continued speaking. The embarrassing part is that, later, Lue Ting came to the shop looking for me one evening. We ended up arguing. I lost control of my emotions and she saw it. Zhang Yu burst out laughing upon hearing this. Well, you two really are fated to be together. I let out a sigh. I haven't been this embarrassed in years. It just so happens that each time someone saw it, just thinking about it feels humiliating. But it was also just a chance encounter. Let it be. If they saw it, they saw it. They won't go around spreading it. Besides, I even treated her to coffee and a meal. She definitely wouldn't mention it frequently. I joked a few comments. At the company, I got up and saw Zhang Yu to his car. This line seems incomplete and may need clarification. After watching the car drive away, I returned to the shop to get back to work. During lunchtime, my dad called. I lazily answered, and on the other end, I heard him say, Son, are you coming back for dinner tonight? The sweet and sour ribs I made and the crispy pork my mom made. Do you want to eat? The first thought that popped into my mind was eating. But thinking about my parents yesterday, they sent me off with food and even said they'd eat for me. I swallowed those words back down. Dad, I ate last night. I won't eat today, okay? You and Mom can just eat it for me. I really don't need to eat. Upon hearing this, my dad chuckled softly. Son's personality is really just like yours. My mom shot him a glare. My dad then asked me again, are you really not going to eat? I just bought the ingredients this morning. Hearing this, I stubbornly insisted. I ate too much yesterday. My dad pretended to sigh. All right then. Son, you go ahead and get busy. I'm hanging up now. My dad pulled the phone away from his ear while telling my mom, let's make a steak for dinner. I brought home a tomahawk steak after work. Suddenly, I couldn't play tough anymore and weakly said, make the tomahawk steak more tender. I started making requests. Seeing this, my parents were overjoyed. Okay, come back tonight and we'll make it for you. I despised my own behavior, but the smile on my face betrayed me. After hanging up, I forgot everything else. Mainly because of the sweet and sour dishes my parents made. The sweet and sour ribs and crispy pork were so delicious. Even yesterday's restaurant couldn't compare. I can only say it was a substitute. At 4 in the afternoon, I had already told the staff, and left the shop. I bought some fruits to bring over. When passing by Zhang University, I turned my head and looked for a few seconds. My parents' house is near Zhang University. After parking the car, I picked up the fruits and entered my parents' house. As soon as I walked in, I smelled the steak, mixed with a hint of sweetness and sourness. They are all my favorites. I walked into the kitchen and greeted my parents. My mom pointed at the sink. Shaolin has arrived. Come over and wash your hands first. I responded with an oh. I walked over and washed my hands under the faucet. After drying my hands, I helped bring the dishes to the table. My parents were still busy in the kitchen. After a while, all the dishes were served. The three of us took our seats. Just as I picked up my chopsticks, I heard my dad say, "Yesterday we went out to eat. We talked about you and Ting Ting with your Uncle Luo and the others. They even said you two were discussing getting a marriage license." Hearing this, my hand holding the chopsticks paused. Suddenly, I remembered this matter. I gave a weak MMHMM. My mom then asked, "Have you two decided when to get the license?" My dad was also quite happy. Young people like you don't need to count the days for these things. After getting the license, we must go to see old Luo. Discussing the wedding arrangements. I listened as my parents talked about getting the marriage certificate. I looked up at my parents. Each of them had a smile on their face. They were quite pleased that I was marrying Luo Yuding. After all, we know the Luo family very well. They watched Luo Yuding grow up too. How could they not be satisfied? Upon seeing my expression, my parents were a bit surprised. Xiao-in, what happened between you and Ting Ting? I pressed my lips tightly together. Right now, I have no appetite at all. I put down my chopsticks and replied with my head lowered. I broke up with her. My parents were momentarily stunned after I finished speaking. Then, Shen Ling frowned. Are you the one who brought it up? I nodded and said to her. It was me who brought it up. Upon hearing this, my mother's expression changed instantly. My dad spoke up before she did. Xian, small quarrels between couples are normal. Relationships grow through these little bumps and scrapes. Don't act impulsively out of anger. Will you regret it later? It's really unnecessary to argue and break up over trivial matters. After saying that, my dad sighed. Hearing this, my throat felt dry and I replied, I won't regret it. My mom looked at me with anger and said, You won't regret it. What use is saying you won't regret it? I just don't understand. What could make you and Ting Ting argue and break up? You grew up together. What could she possibly do to you? You're just being stubborn. You keep holding on to this point. Haven't Uncle Luo and Aunt Zhao treated you poorly? What else do you have against Luo Yuding? At this point, I fell silent. I knew my parents would have a strong reaction to my breakup, but I didn't expect to be scolded like this. With each word they said, my heart trembled. You ask nothing at all. You only know how to criticize me. I'm just being stubborn. I wouldn't let go of the issue. I deserve to be hit by her, right? I recalled the scene of Luo Yuding hitting me that day, and my parents kept praising Luo Yuding. My parents froze when they heard me say I got hit. I quietly watched them. I just accidentally broke a cup that belonged to her ex. She actually got angry at me. She even hit me. She came to me repeatedly, saying that getting hit was a small matter. She said I was fixating on this issue. Wanting me to be with her isn't for my own good. It's like sending me to my doom. After saying that, I got up, pushed the door open, and ran out of the house. While taking the elevator down, I still heard Dad, Mom urgently calling my name. My dad sighed and held on to his wife. He doesn't want to see us right now. Let's not provoke him. My mom was so anxious that she cried. She regretted saying so many good things about Luo Yuding. Why didn't I ask them why they broke up? My mom felt sad just thinking about what I just said. I really want to ask how they raised their daughter. Saying this, she took out her phone to make a call. My dad stopped her. Shaolin is just afraid we'll go looking for them. Old Luo wouldn't tell us because it's troublesome. I'll call Zhang Bao first. I'll ask about the situation. When the call connected, my dad asked, Do you have time to talk now? Zhang Yu wasn't surprised at all to receive my dad's call. Uncle Lu, go ahead and ask. It's about our Lu Xian and Luo Yuding. Do you know? He guessed that Zhang Yu should know something. They had a dinner gathering yesterday. Zhang Yu's parents laughed too forcibly when they mentioned Luo. They were too awkward when talking about Yuding. At the time, no one took it seriously. Looking back now, they probably knew something. They just highlighted a few key points. After finishing, he added, Lu Xian has always liked Luo Yuding. Breaking up already puts me in a bad mood. Over these days, he's managed to regulate his emotions well on his own. Uncle, you and Auntie shouldn't talk about him. No one is more miserable than he is. When he heard this, my dad sighed. No translation needed. Uncle, I'll go check on Xian. You all don't need to worry. My dad quickly said. Filled circle thank you, Zhang Yu. After hanging up the phone, my mom spoke to my dad. I don't care about that anymore. But my son can't suffer for no reason. After saying that, my mom took out her phone. She called Lu Ting's mom. This time, my dad understood the situation and was extremely angry. He didn't stop his wife at all. On the other side, I got off the elevator, opened the car door, and sat in the driver's seat. Bitterness and feelings of injustice filled my heart, feeling misunderstood. I don't know why it turned out this way. Clearly, I didn't do anything wrong. Yet everyone is blaming me. My hands rested on the steering wheel. My hands were trembling slightly. The sound of car horns echoed in my ears. I ignored it. Suddenly, after a while, someone knocked on the window twice. I turned my head to look. A familiar face appeared before me. It was Xia Yushan. I opened the car door and stepped out. Xia Yushan noticed my eyes were red. This was the third time she had seen me this sad. It felt like I was about to break apart. I was afraid that a gentle breeze would make me disappear. She reached out her long arms and gave me a hug. My whole body stiffened for a moment. I buried my head in her shoulder and sobbed silently. Sha Yushan couldn't help but feel heartbroken. Her hands, hanging by her side, unconsciously clenched. She slowly moved her hand to my back, wanting to pat me gently. But then she remembered we had only met by chance and she didn't even know my name. In the end, she still let her hand drop. Suddenly I said something. Miss Shaw, can we get married? Yes. I'm just acting out of impulsive revenge. Luo Yuding thinks that I'm the only one for her. Her parents keep boasting about Luo Yuding everywhere while holding the marriage certificate. Then I'll just marry someone else. If hugging Sha Yushan surprised her, then saying this to her now, would make her pupils tremble even more. Sha Yushan stood there in a daze for a long while before snapping back to reality. She slowly pulled my hand away. Seeing my slightly reddened eyes, she felt a bit of pity, but she responded very solemnly. You can't do this. You can't just act on a whim and casually marry a stranger you've only met a few times. Someone whose name you don't even know. My mind was foggy and I couldn't take in anything else. I only knew that Sha Yushan was unwilling. I thought that was normal. Who would marry a stranger inexplicably like I did? Sorry to disturb you. I stepped back to get into the car, but I was stopped by Sha Yushan. She silently sighed to herself. How can you drive in this condition? Let me drive you back. What I said just now, Sha Yushan understood it to mean. Since you're unwilling, then I apologize for the disturbance. I'll ask other strangers if they want to marry me. I said thank you. Then I got into the passenger seat. Sha Yushan glanced at her car across the street. She got into the driver's seat. She started the car to take me back. Last time, she remembered the route when she brought me the keys. It's not far from the coffee shop. At that moment, I slowly spoke up. My parents really like Luo Yuding. They assumed it was my fault for breaking up with her without asking me why. More than a decade of feelings. I just broke a cup that my ex gave her, and she made such a fuss over it. I spoke softly and gently. I just wanted to express the frustration in my heart. Otherwise, asking is too painful. Sha Yushan listened to every word. After a moment, Sha Yushan finally spoke, her voice neither too soft nor too loud. But you can't use your marriage to take revenge on others. You should understand this person better. To say something unpleasant. Marrying someone whose values don't match yours. If you hung yourself, she would think you were swinging. Hearing her say this, I thought for a moment and it seemed true. I parked the car outside the community. Sha Yushan looked at my state with concern. After hesitating for a moment, she said, I'll take you upstairs. I nodded. We went inside together. I changed my shoes and sat on the sofa. My voice was also weak and feeble. Thank you for bringing me back. Sha Yushan's gaze fell on my face. Seeing me close my eyes, she seemed to calm down. Her phone in her bag vibrated. She immediately took it out and pressed the answer button. She went to the balcony to answer the call. A woman's voice sounded in my ear from the other end of the line. Where are you, Sha Yushan? You said to have dinner together. Where have you gone? I have something to attend to. You can eat by yourself. Also, my car is parked on the roadside. You can drive it to dinner. After dinner, come pick me up in the evening. Before the other party could speak, Sha Yushan said again. How much did you spend on food? I'll transfer you the money. The person on the other end laughed. Alright, call me in the evening and I'll come pick you up. She hung up the phone. Sha Yushan looked at me lying on the sofa. She came out from the balcony and went to the kitchen. She opened the refrigerator and took a look around. She took out a few vegetables. She also took out a bag of ribs from the freezer section. She took off her black trench coat and prepared to drape it over the chair. She caught sight of me sleeping. She gently covered me with the coat. She rolled up the sleeves of her shirt and re-entered the kitchen. I had probably slept for 20 minutes. I smelled a fragrance in the air. I thought Zhang Yu and Wanner had arrived. I rubbed my eyes and entered the kitchen. I called out before I even saw her. After realizing it wasn't the two of them, I touched my neck. Miss Shaw, are you cooking? You. Sha Yushan had just finished cooking and was planning to leave. She probably guessed I was scolded by my parents and hadn't even eaten. I just planned to cook a meal before leaving. I didn't expect to wake up just now. Sha Yushan looked at me and said, I've prepared the meal for you. I'm leaving now. I looked at the several dishes on the table. In the middle was sweet and sour ribs. The air was filled with a tangy sweet and sour smell. Miss Shaw, aren't you going to eat? I turned around to see Sha Yushan putting on her coat. Sha Yushan's gaze landed on me, watching me enter the kitchen to grab 2 pairs of chopsticks and 2 bowls. I turned to her and said, let's eat. Sha Yushan paused in place, her eyes. Chen Chen watched as I neatly arranged the dishes and chopsticks. Only then did I walk towards the dining table and say, I casually took a few ingredients from the fridge. I forced a smile. Thank you. I originally planned to cook these dishes tonight. I picked up a piece of rib and put it in my bowl. The taste was surprisingly good. I couldn't help but praise it. Miss Shaw, you're actually quite good at cooking. Sha Yushan's lips curled into a barely noticeable smile. Perhaps it was my worries that I had shared with Sha Yushan. My feelings of frustration in my heart weren't so intense. I originally had no appetite, but now I was definitely hungry. So I began to eat a bit faster. Sha Yushan glanced at me, seriously eating. I felt her gaze and looked up at her, just swallowing the food in my mouth. I blinked my dry eyes and asked, did I eat too fast? Sha Yushan shook her head, averted her gaze, and focused on eating. I just feel like you're slimmer than the first time I saw you. You should eat more. I called out and nodded in agreement. Then I'll eat a little more. Luo Yuding is no longer worthy of making me sad in the future. Listening to myself seriously answering my own words, Sha Yushan smiled. In the end, I finished what she made. I ate the entire plate of sweet and sour ribs. After finishing dinner, I put the dishes into the dishwasher. When I returned, Xia Yushan had already finished wiping the table. She rearranged the vase in the center of the dining table. She also adjusted the angle of the vase. I thanked Xia Yushan. Miss Xia, thank you for helping me cook today. Xia Yushan wiped her hands with a tissue and said, You're welcome. Then she looked up at me. If there's nothing else, I'll head out first. I replied with an acknowledgement. Be careful on your way. As I said this, I prepared to walk her to the main entrance. However, I was stopped by Xia Yushan. You should rest. I'll go down by myself. She stopped at the entrance and turned around to say, Mr. Liu, in the future, don't casually ask strange women if they want to get married. I awkwardly nodded in response. Got it. Xia Yushan had more to say but felt it was overstepping. Then I'll leave. She opened the door and walked out. She casually closed the door behind her. Stepping out of the elevator, I lowered my head and sent a message to a friend with my address for her to pick me up. Zhang Yu and Chu Wanner brushed past her. Chu Wanner suddenly stopped in her tracks. She looked towards Xia Yushan standing outside the community gate. Zhang Yu followed her gaze and looked inside. Chu Wanner turned around and replied, A woman with an incredibly superior figure. I didn't see her face. Just now, when she walked past me. At first glance, I thought that profile was the one I saw at the banquet before. Zhang Yu didn't see her face at all, so he didn't pay attention. The two pressed the elevator directly to the 9th floor and rang the doorbell. He said, I wonder if Xian is awake or not. As soon as he finished speaking, the door opened. I opened the door and let them in. Why are you coming over so late? Chu Wanner teasingly handed me the food box she brought. Aren't you afraid of starving at home? I took it. Thank you. Coming over this late. I placed the food box on the table. I poured them some water and then asked. When your dad called me, I told him everything. He felt particularly guilty. Aunt Shen, such a calm person. Hearing that Luo Yuding laid hands on you made her cry uncontrollably. To be honest, he has never seen such a woman like Aunt Shen. Chu Wanner also chimed in. It's all Lu Yuting's fault. It's all fun and games. Does Lu Yuting know you're saying this about her behind her back? Chu Wanner shrugged nonchalantly. I'm not saying that outside. I chuckled and then said. I didn't mean to blame my parents. I was feeling a bit down at that time. Emotional excitement. Hearing me say that, they felt relieved. Zhang Yu glanced at the time. It was already 7:30. You eat first. I waved my hand and said. But I've already eaten. I just finished cleaning the table 5 minutes before you guys arrived. Zhang Yu paused and scrutinized my face. How could I possibly cook for myself in this situation? Not just Zhang Yu. Even Chu Wanner thought something was off. Who is it with? I didn't know how to respond at that moment. I just ran out from my parents' house. Miss Shaw gave me a ride back. She even cooked for me. With just that one sentence, Zhang Yu and Chu Wanner had endless questions. Who is Miss Shaw? Why did she give you a ride back? Why did she cook for you? I looked at them seriously and said, It's the one who helped me check my keys and gave me a ride back before. You saw her at the coffee shop this morning. Her? Zhang Yu suddenly changed the subject. After a pause. Is she very familiar with you? I shook my head and said, I can't say we're close. I would say we are just friends from a chance encounter. We haven't even exchanged names, let alone any contact information. Upon hearing this, Chu Wanner seemed to recall something. Last time, Luo Yuding called me and said you were having dinner with a woman. Is it also her? I nodded and continued. That's right, it was her. Because the day before yesterday, she brought me a cake. I bumped into her at their school gate yesterday. So I invited her to dinner. Once, I was leaning on the car window, looking at the beauty of the school gate. Suddenly she appeared and asked me how I got here. I felt embarrassed to tell the truth. I felt a suffocating sense of being caught. Zhang Yu laughed out loud without holding back. What did you say? I scratched my head and said. Of course, I spoke in a positive light. I said to look at the vibrant students. But the result was someone who hadn't woken up yet. She expressionlessly said it was quite vibrant. This time even Chu Wanner laughed. At this moment, I also looked at them expressionlessly. That's not fair. Zhang Yu cleared his throat and took a deep breath. He couldn't help but laugh again. No laughing, no laughing. Then we'll take our leave. Make sure to rest early. I saw them downstairs. I waved as they got into the car. Drive safely tonight. I picked up my phone. I looked at the contact numbers in my address book. I called my parents. My mom picked up the phone in a second. Shen Ling said eagerly. Shaolin, have you eaten? It's my mom's fault. Didn't ask you for the backstory. It's the first time my mom rushed to explain something to me. I was a bit flattered and surprised. It's nothing, really. I was just feeling a bit off at that time. I ran out of the house because I wasn't stable. Really, it's nothing. I'm fine now. I've already eaten. Zhang Yu and Mu Shui also brought me dinner last night. It's good that there's nothing wrong. My mom repeated it twice. The weight in my heart was lifted. We chatted for a while longer before hanging up the phone. I placed my phone aside, thinking back to the time with Luo Yuding. Aside from being childhood sweethearts, the title of being a couple, everything else was almost the same as before. Gifts for birthdays and gifts for festivals. There were no boundary-crossing actions. You could say it was a relationship as pure as could be. Or perhaps it couldn't even be called a romantic relationship. Just that we bore the title of lovers. She still treated herself as my older brother, even after we became lovers. She seems to take my kindness towards her for granted. We, as childhood sweethearts, have all witnessed Luo Yu Ting's previous relationship. When she was with her ex, she wanted to be glued to her ex for 24 hours a day. I recalled all these things about Luo Yu Ting. I feel a bit relieved now. Being with Luo Yu Ting is like asking for trouble. It wasn't even 10 o'clock, and I was already sleepy, turning off the lights. On the other side, Sha Yushan tossed and turned in bed, wide awake. She replayed everything about our encounter in her mind. Although we met by chance. But it's more than just a chance encounter. In her mind, he asked with red eyes if he could marry him. At that moment, she almost said yes. But she knew clearly that he was just speaking out of anger. It seemed like he wanted to impulsively get back at someone. The more Sha Yushan thought about it, the more anxious she became. A thought was wildly spreading in her mind. It occupied her thoughts. Her days went by in a routine manner. She suddenly wanted to act impulsively. She made this decision. I gradually fell asleep. Only then did it come into view. I had a nightmare, slept for less than 3 hours, and then woke up. After getting up, I took the household registration book. It was raining heavily today. She took an umbrella. She opened the car door, held up the umbrella, and walked down the road. She thought to herself that Mr. Liu probably wouldn't go out on a rainy day either. If they didn't run into each other, it would mean it was just a chance encounter. Since it was a chance encounter, she decided to let it go. After all, they were just passing by. This thought should also disperse. She stood downstairs, not knowing how long she had been there. She thought of many things in her heart. Passers-by came and went, oblivious to her. The rain showed no signs of stopping, instead, it intensified. She lifted her gaze and glanced at the sky. Still dim. It seemed to hint that this impulsive thought should disappear. I planned to go to the coffee shop this morning. However, I went to bed early last night. This morning, I got up and made myself a nice and hearty breakfast. Before putting breakfast in the oven, I tidied up the room a bit. I also went downstairs to take out the trash. It was only after entering the elevator that I realized I didn't bring an umbrella. But I didn't go back to get it. It's just a matter of running a few steps. A warrior is not afraid of the wind and waves. I stepped out of the elevator and headed outside. Suddenly, my footsteps paused. I swear I will never forget that scene. Miss Shaw was holding a black umbrella in the rain. She seemed to blend into the rain, appearing especially lonely. I hurriedly ran outside. I called out to Sha Yushan. Smoke. Sha Yushan slightly lifted her gaze, watching me rush in the rain. I smiled and waved at her. I ran in under the eaves, braving the rain, and asked. It shrank. Miss Shaw, what brings you here? I couldn't help but feel puzzled when I saw Sha Yushan standing downstairs at my place early in the morning. Is there something you need? Is it because of my boldness yesterday, when I asked if I could marry her? Afraid I might still be uncomfortable today. So you came early this morning. If that's really the case, she's really a good person. After thinking that, I continued. It's really cold outside in the rain. Sha Yushan didn't say anything and followed me into the elevator. She only said, I came to see you. As soon as she finished speaking, the elevator door opened. I left the umbrella at the door and entered the house. Thank you, miss. Early in the morning. I was already taken aback. I was a bit touched. Then I took a dry towel from the house and handed it to Sha Yushan. Miss Shaw, let me wipe that for you. Then I continued speaking. I'm making breakfast. Have you eaten? I've made a lot. Let's eat together. After saying that, I walked to the kitchen to bring out the side dishes I made in the oven. I also brought 2 bowls of wontons to the table. Sha Yushan glanced at the table. There were thumb-sized pan-fried dumplings, baked pancakes, and a plate of fruit. Let's eat. I handed Sha Yushan the chopsticks. She reached out to take them with a smile. I said with a smile, Miss Shaw, I should thank you for this. Coming to see me so early in the rain. Sha Yushan replied. Didn't you come down? I looked at her in confusion and asked. Then if I didn't go down to throw the trash, you wouldn't have come up? Sha Yushan nodded and murmured. I smiled. I've already dealt with it. I was indeed impulsive yesterday. What you said is all correct. I am slowly changing my occasionally impulsive and rebellious self. Upon hearing this, Sha Yushan slightly nodded. Then she introduced herself to me. My name is Sha Yushan. I am from Yan'an City. I am a 28-year-old university professor. She usually just says she is a teacher. Today, she mentioned that she is a university professor. She has taken this self-introduction quite seriously. She curved her lips. I already know. Sha Yushan raised her eyes to look at me. You know me. Yes. The youngest professor in the Chinese department at Zhang University. I have also looked at your school. There was even a special column about you. I exclaimed in admiration. Miss Shaw, I have looked at your past achievements. You are truly remarkable. Skipping grades and being directly admitted is nothing for you. Sha Yushan laughed softly. So, that's how it is. I hurriedly introduced myself as well. My name is Liu Xian. I am also from Yan'an City. 20. I am the owner of a coffee shop. It seems that's about it. Liu Xian. Summer Yushan silently repeated my name a few times in her mind. We finished our breakfast. We sat and chatted for a while. I looked Summer Yushan up and down again and couldn't help but ask curiously. Where are you going today, Miss Shaw? Summer Yushan didn't mention her destination. She just started cleaning up the mess on the table while asking. Should all this go to the kitchen? No need. I'll handle it. I stood up to clear the bowls and chopsticks. Summer Yushan had no choice but to stand up and wipe the table. When I came out, the dining room was already tidied up. Thank you. I also brought out the lemon water I had brewed in the morning. I poured a glass for Summer Yushan. Summer Yushan's voice carried a hint of apology. I'm sorry to trouble you. She had noticed I was busy since she walked in. It seemed she felt she had caused me trouble. I shook my head. It's not a bother. I'm like this at home too. Sha Yushan seemed a bit hesitant. She asked a question aloud. Are you clear-headed and rational today? A firm, no. It was a bit abrupt. But I think Sha Yushan must care about me. And Miss Shaw seems a bit reserved today. Is the Zon party pressuring you? I looked at her and smiled as I nodded. You cooked for me after what you said yesterday. And my friend came over last night too. Last night, I called my parents. I clarified everything with them. I won't be sad for someone unworthy anymore. After asking this question, Sha Yushan felt relieved. Her gaze fell on my handsome, three-dimensional face. Mr. Liu, can you marry me? This was the question I asked her yesterday. That question never left Sha Yushan's mind. My hand holding the glass cup froze. I stared blankly at Sha Yushan. She also found my reaction normal, her voice gradually softening. You don't have to rush to answer my question. I suppose it's also my impulsiveness. I just hope you give me an answer while you are clear-headed. I want you to reply in a rational state. You can take your time to ask me the questions you have. I will give you an answer for each one. I gradually came back to my senses. Still looking at Sha Yushan with curious doubt. She stood downstairs in the rain all morning just waiting for me to show up. It turns out she wanted to ask me this one question. Incredible. I looked at her and asked, why? Sha Yushan let out a sigh. For someone I can count on both hands how many times we've met. It's quite strange to have emotional fluctuations. It really is quite baffling. The words you said to me yesterday kept me thinking almost all night. Perhaps my life is too mundane. I was indeed impulsive. You asked me why I didn't come look for you. We began with a chance encounter. If I hadn't waited for you, then we would have returned to being two strangers who just met by chance. She spoke slowly, word by word, without haste. I asked a bit startled. Do you need this marriage? Sha Yushan shook her head, her voice clear and smooth. I only pay for my own emotions. It has nothing to do with anything else. The impulsive desire for revenge from yesterday is gone. I was originally going to stop at Autumn. I should have stopped at Autumn's edge. Because Sha Yushan's 2 or 3 messages rekindled my feelings. For a moment, I was speechless. Sha Yushan wasn't embarrassed at all. It was always accompanied by a 50% chance of failure. I haven't rejected it yet. She could only continue discussing herself. Aside from the reasons why I should marry you, I have a house and a car. I probably have some savings. I chuckled when she mentioned savings. Miss Sha, you might want to keep your savings to yourself. Sha Yushan raised her eyebrows slightly and nodded. I live alone. Life is quite simple. If I get married and have children in the future, I can also put my job on hold temporarily. After silently listening to everything, I felt a bit chaotic inside. I spoke as if I could no longer express it, but I was thinking about the present and the person in front of me. It wouldn't be bad for this woman to get married. Everything has been resolved, and I know I'm not capable of that. I won't quickly get out of my last relationship, afraid I would forget the pain and get back together with Luo Yuding. A voice inside me was clamoring to agree with her. Don't leave yourself a way out. I don't even know where the courage came from. I actually agreed. Regarding my agreement, Sha Yushan was taken aback for a moment. Seeing her reaction, I coughed awkwardly. Are you going to say I can't casually marry a stranger I've only met a few times? Can you get married to a stranger you've only met a few times? Sha Yushan smiled slightly. It's your turn to lecture me today. She lost the right to lecture me since last night. I placed the glass upright. Then let's get our license today. The words, get a license. When I said it, it felt surreal. Just a while ago, I was discussing these 2 words with someone else. The changes are indeed quite significant. Sha Yushan left early in the morning with it. I brought my ID and household register. I nodded and went to the room to pick out some clothes. The street. You wait for the tax meeting. I have never been this impulsive and rebellious before. This time, I'm not leaving myself any way out. It would have been better to have a relationship first. But I just don't feel like talking anymore. Might as well go all out if we're going to play. After changing my clothes, I said to her again. Wait a moment. There's still something I haven't taken. After saying that, I ran back into the bedroom. Sha Yushan got up and swept the floor. And tidied up the table as well. Just finished tidying up. I walked out of the bedroom. Sha Yushan's gaze landed on me, and she couldn't help but stop in her tracks. The handsome appearance paired with the formal suit is even more attractive. I lowered my hands and walked towards Sha Yushan. Standing in front of her, I looked at her. She met my gaze. Very handsome. A smile spread across my face. I held the household register in my hand. The household registration has always been with my parents. Later, when they heard I was going to marry Luo Yuding, they left it with me to give me a surprise. They probably thought I would give them a surprise. In the end, I completely broke up with Luo Yuding. I didn't expect it to come in handy after all. Then let's go. I changed my shoes and left the house with Sha Yushan. Sha Yushan was wondering just now if my compliment was a bit too perfunctory. What I really thought was a graceful young man, warm as jade. How could it come out without thought? My first reaction in my mind was that he was very handsome. Sha Yushan bent slightly to pick up the umbrella on the ground. I took the umbrella from her hand and said, I'll take it. Then we entered the elevator together. In the elevator, my right fingers curled slightly. I bumped into Sha Yushan's hand. After getting off the elevator, I naturally held her hand. Her hand felt a bit cold, but very soft. I noticed the rain had stopped. I was a bit surprised. Now even the sun is out. My car was parked by the side of the road. She got into the passenger seat. I saw my household registration book on the central control panel. On the way to the Civil Affairs Bureau, I felt very calm. I parked the car in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau. I looked at Sha Yushan seriously and asked, Do you really not regret it? Sha Yushan choked up a little. Isn't this something she should be asking me? But she continued with my line of thought. I don't regret it. I follow my own thoughts. If I hadn't made this decision, I might regret it for a long time. That would be worth trying. I won't let myself have any regrets. Her words were also like a catalyst for me. All unnecessary worries disappeared. Just as Sha Yushan was about to push the car door open. But I held her arm. She looked at me with some confusion. What's wrong? I took out a ring box from behind the car. I don't know if you'll like it. If you don't like it, we can choose another one at the store this afternoon. I opened the ring box and inside were 2 rings. They are probably over 1 carat. The 3-layer structure is very beautiful. I had prepared this ring box a long time ago. There should still be a ceremony for marriage. If Sha Yushan doesn't like it, we can change it later. Sha Yushan's beautiful eyes seemed to light up. Then she took out one of the rings and put it on my finger. We both put the rings on each other's fingers. In front of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Sha Yushan asked me again. Once we go in, we can't regret it. I held Sha Yushan's hand tightly. We stepped into the Civil Affairs Bureau. I was extremely calm when we went in. After getting the stamp, I took the book out. Suddenly, I couldn't stay calm anymore. I stood at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Staring at the red book in my hand, I was dumbfounded. I felt my legs go a bit weak. Are you okay? Sha Yushan looked at me, frozen in place. For a moment, I didn't feel I regretted it. After all, I had been quite calm when I first went in. I quietly looked at Sha Yushan. Those brief 10 minutes felt like a dream. And then I got married. Luckily, the bride was still quite attractive. The elegant and composed mature woman looked better the more I gazed. Play button. Sha Yushan paused and asked, do you regret it? I took a few deep breaths to calm down. But I still felt a bit anxious inside. I suddenly got the marriage certificate. What will my parents and your parents say about this? Sha Yushan chuckled lightly. I'll go visit them this afternoon first. I hurriedly grabbed Sha Yushan. No. Let's keep it a secret for now. The key issue is that I don't know how to tell my parents. And I just resolved a conflict with them. If they find out I got a marriage certificate with someone I've only met a few times, they would definitely think I was pushed by them into this impulsive decision. They would feel guilty. And they might even blame Miss Sha. Sha Yushan still thinks this isn't a good idea. It's not good, right? I directly changed the subject and said, do your parents know? Should I go meet your parents first? Sha Yushan shook her head and said, I don't know. I will talk to them. After getting the certificate, I realized there are many things I haven't considered. I really messed up this time. I seriously turned to Sha Yushan and asked, are your parents easy to get along with? They won't hate me, right? If there's some family conflict again, wouldn't I just be adding more trouble for myself? Sha Yushan looked at me with a light smile and comforted me. They will like you. Usually, they would hint at it from time to time. Let her date a boyfriend or something. Now she's officially married. Her family wouldn't say much about who she likes. Hearing this, I immediately breathed a sigh of relief. This is what you said. Sha Yushan nodded. Don't worry. Once in the car, I hesitated for a few seconds in my mind. Miss Sha, can you just stay at my place? Afraid she wouldn't agree, I added a few more words. My place is in a pretty good location. It's not far to drive to where you work. Why don't you think about it? I looked at Sha Yushan with expectation. Sha Yushan had no intention of refusing at all. Okay, I'll go back and pack my things. I sighed with relief, thinking I should give a reason. So I spoke my mind. Actually, I don't plan to tell my parents about us for now. Afraid of being discovered. Sha Yushan nodded and said, I can understand. These are all minor issues. It doesn't matter where we live. I won't refuse your proposal. At this moment, I was once again conflicted about what married couples should do. I don't need to be too polite, but how should I address her? Calling her Miss Sha feels distant. Directly calling her by her name seems a bit rude. Calling her by 2 syllables feels like we're not that close. So frustrating. Let's just skip it. After packing up at Sha Yushan's place, I got ready to go eat. By the time we reached the restaurant, it was already 1:30 p.m. While we were eating, Sha Yushan spoke up and asked, you don't want me to be known by your parents and friends, do you? I quickly shook my head and said, no, that's not it. It doesn't matter if my friends know. I need to prepare my parents for a couple of days first. Let's go back together in a few days. Is that okay? Sha Yushan nodded. Sure. Although it's a bit impulsive, it's definitely not just a whim. I really hope we can spend the rest of our lives together. Hearing this, I also nodded. Although I don't know much. But I never thought of marriage as a game. Hearing me say this, she felt much more at ease. After dinner, we went to the mall and bought quite a few things. However, I was a bit puzzled about Sha Yushan buying gifts for the meeting. However, she said, let's prepare it first. Better safe than sorry, we will see each other eventually. Suddenly, I felt a bit uncomfortable in my heart. Miss Sha's enthusiasm made me feel a bit guilty for not letting her meet my parents. It felt like I was hiding her away from meeting people. Then I'll also prepare something for uncle and aunt in advance. Although I don't know when we will meet. Following what Sha Yushan bought, I bought another set. Who knew in the end, it was still Sha Yushan who paid. Shouldn't I be the one paying? I'm a bit dissatisfied. Sha Yushan smiled helplessly. We are both married now. Isn't it all the same? I muttered softly. How can that be the same? Sha Yushan heard me mumbling softly. She couldn't help but lower her gaze. But she couldn't hear clearly what I said. It took us 2 trips to bring everything we bought today back home. After shopping all afternoon, my whole body aches. When I got back, I just collapsed on the couch. I didn't care about my image in front of Miss Sha anymore. Seeing Sha Yushan dragging her suitcase over, I quickly got up and went to the cloakroom with her. This side will be for your clothes from now on. Just clothes. My clothes are on the left side. The right side is intended for Sha Yushan's use. She crouched down and started to organize her clothes. Just then, there was a sound at the door. Thinking about Miss Sha's positive attitude today, I felt it was unfair to hide my feelings for her, so I said, Long-haired inquiry. It might be my friend Zhang Mian. Hearing this, Sha Yushan smiled slightly. He didn't hide himself. Honestly, he's a little happy inside. It's a bit open. He immediately put down the clothes he was holding and went to open the door. On her way to open the door, Sha Yushan thought about what I just said. Thinking about what I just said, it seemed like when I was cooking here that day. He called out without seeing the person clearly. It should be his good friend. As soon as she opened the door, 6 pairs of eyes met. For a moment, it was silent. The person standing at the door was no peer at all. At this age and looking like that, they resembled Lu Xian's parents. So it turns out Lu Xian is so handsome. He must have inherited his parents' good genes. My parents were holding 2 lunchboxes. Seeing that the person who opened the door wasn't their son, they both stepped back 2 steps. They glanced at the house number. My mom murmured in confusion. So this is the place. My dad looked at Sha Yushan who opened the door. May I ask who you are? Sha Yushan politely called out as she opened the door. Mom and Dad. Good evening. After a 3-month cold war with my childhood sweetheart, I posted something on my social media. I'm married now. From now on, I am officially certified. Everyone in the friend group is sending their best wishes crazy. They say that our childhood sweethearts have finally moved on from school uniforms. The atmosphere in the group was lively. I added the beautiful, mature professor into the group. Don't get me wrong. This is my wife. Just then, there was a sound at the door. Thinking about Miss Shaw's positive attitude today, I felt it was unfair to hide my feelings for her, so I said, Miss Shaw, live long. It might be my friend, Zhang Ting. Upon hearing this, Sha Yushan's lips curled into a smile. He didn't intend to hide himself. He was a bit happy. Actually, there are still feelings inside. There are, indeed, some feelings, and he is a bit happy. He immediately put down the clothes he was holding and went to open the door. On the way to the door, Sha Yushan was thinking about what I just said about Zhang. It seemed like she was here cooking for herself all day. He didn't even look at anyone and just called out Zhang Yu. He should be a really good friend of his. She opened the door. 6 pairs of eyes met. For a moment, there was an awkward silence. The ones standing at the door were not peers at all. At this age, they looked more like Lu Xian's parents. So, Lu Xian is actually so handsome. He must have inherited his parents' good genes. My parents were holding 2 food boxes. They realized the person opening the door wasn't their son. The 2 of them took 2 steps back. They glanced at the door number. My mom mumbled in confusion. So this is the place. My dad looked at the one who opened the door, Sha Yushan. May I ask who you are? Sha Yushan stepped aside and politely called out, Mom and Dad. Good evening. Hearing, Mom and Dad, left the 2 of them stunned. Mom and Dad, please come in and have a seat. Sha Yushan suddenly felt fortunate for her preparations. Luckily, she bought gifts in the afternoon. Otherwise, it would have been so awkward. Who would have thought she'd meet Xian's parents so soon? A little happy. As long as my in-laws know her, then she would completely be Lu Xian's well-known wife. After the 2 entered, they confirmed they hadn't taken the wrong door upon seeing the layout and decor inside. Sha Yushan immediately poured tea for her in-laws. It left the 3 of them in a bit of a daze. They had just asked, who are you? Suddenly, they heard me say from nearby, Bam! Why are you here? I changed into home clothes. I walked towards the living room. I froze in place when I saw who had come. It was actually my parents. I originally wanted to keep it a secret, but they came over in the evening. Lu Xian. There are friends at home. My dad looked at Sha Yushan. He seemed quite pleased with the woman in front of him. She looked like a refined woman from a prominent family. But ever since Luo Yuding, he no longer just looks at appearances. No matter how good it looks, it's useless. What truly matters is real quality. I gave an awkward smile. Slowly walked over. Mom, Dad, why are you here today? My mom leaned over, patted the food container on the table, and smiled. You didn't get to eat the dishes we made yesterday. So today we have a surprise for you. We brought it for you. I sat next to Sha Yushan and said, Thank you, Mom and Dad. My dad looked at Sha Yushan and smiled, saying, You are our Xian's friend, right? Stay and have dinner with us later. I took a breath and said, Mom, Dad, she isn't my friend. My parents looked at Sha Yushan with confusion. Then who is this? Sha Yushan introduced herself to them. Mom, Dad, my name is Sha Yushan. I'm 28 this year. I am from Yan'an City. I am a university professor. Upon hearing this, my mom immediately understood that she is our Xian's suitor. But you can't just call them Mom and Dad upon meeting, right? That's not how it's done. My dad heard the name Sha Yushan. Suddenly remembered. I had previously discussed her with several other teachers. The youngest professor in the Chinese department at Zhang University next door. He even praised that the younger generation is to be held in awe. I lowered my head and quietly spoke. Actually, she is my wife. Upon hearing this, my parents suddenly looked at us. What did you say? My mom, taken aback, suddenly spoke anxiously. Is it because of the harsh words I said to you yesterday? You impulsively found someone to marry without thinking it through. It's my fault. You can blame me if you want. How could you? I waved my hand and looked at my mom, saying, Mom, I haven't lost my mind. She seems to think I've lost my mind. Do you think I can just randomly find someone to marry? She's good looking and has a respectable job. I initially planned to keep it from you because I was afraid you would worry. But Yushan bought a lot of things, waiting for my approval before meeting you. Upon hearing this, my mom wanted to say something but her gaze fell on Sha Yushan across the table. Finally, it turned into a sigh. She valued Luo Yuding back then. But what was the outcome? It was hasty, so be it. Talking for too long is pointless anyway. What's important is compatibility. Maybe she really encountered the right person. Shen Ling scrutinized Xia Yushan. However, what Xian said is also true. She's beautiful and has a respectable job. She's indeed perfect. How could one say she's not thinking clearly? Thinking of this, my mom said, "Let's eat." Then she got up to serve the dishes. During dinner, my parents began to interrogate. "You married our Xian. Does your family know?" Xia Yushan looked a bit apologetic. "I don't live with my parents. I haven't mentioned it yet. This is indeed not proper etiquette. Mom and Dad, when are you free? Let's have a meal together." She spoke humbly and roundabout. There's nothing to criticize. Upon hearing this, my parents nodded. "See what your parents think. You arrange a time. Let us know when the time comes." Xia Yushan replied with a, "Good." Then my parents asked again, "Yushan, what do your parents do?" With Xia Yushan being so outstanding, her parents must be quite exceptional too. But it's better to understand their family situation a bit. After all, we will be relatives in the future. Xia Yushan paused for a moment, stayed silent for a few seconds and then replied, "My parents used to run a small business. Now they are in a semi-retired state." My parents didn't continue to ask further. He just wanted to get a rough idea. After dinner, my parents left. The two felt very pleased with Xia Yushan's positive attitude. This has already thrown Luo Yuding out of the picture entirely. After sending off the in-laws, she looked at me beside her and asked, "Is everything going well?" I laughed out loud. In my opinion, my parents were already very happy. Xia Yushan breathed a sigh of relief. "That's good." Xia Yushan came out after taking a shower. I turned to look at her and paused for a few seconds. Xia Yushan, who had just come out of the bathroom. Her little face was flushed from the hot water. Having seen her, I couldn't help but look a few more times. Xia Yushan noticed me staring at her. She touched her face. "Is something wrong?" I said with a smile. "I just looked a few more times because you're beautiful." Upon hearing this, Xia Yushan's face flushed a bit. She turned and ran into the bedroom, leaving behind the sentence, "You should hurry and take a shower." Xia Yushan took off her shoes and climbed onto the bed, lying down flat. This phrase seems unclear and may not translate directly. She turned her head to look at the space beside her. "Now that we're married, we should sleep together, right? I've never shared a bed with someone of the opposite sex before." Xian wouldn't have any other demands, would he? Even though it's not really unreasonable. After all, she's already 28. It's not like it's impossible. But there isn't much of an emotional foundation. Does this count as a legal one-night stand? She pondered for a while. At that moment, I finished my shower and sat on the edge of the bed. Xia Yushan leaned against the headboard and tugged at the blanket. I pulled back the blanket and leaned next to her. Xia Yushan was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. She was as still as a little sheep. Her beautiful eyes looked at me as she said, "I told my parents about us getting our marriage license." I nodded and asked, "So when should I visit them?" Xia Yushan thought for a moment. "I'm free tomorrow afternoon. By the way, I can conveniently visit my in-laws before going to school in the morning." Hearing this, I smiled and said, "That would make my parents so happy." Although my parents have watched Luo Yuding grow up, it seems Luo Yuding isn't very invested in the relationship. She only visits my parents during the holidays. Probably because that's how it has always been. They didn't take it seriously that I was with them afterwards. They only treated me like a regular elder. With this in place, my parents might quickly take a liking to Xia Yushan. Thinking of this, I spoke up again. "Then I'll go with you tomorrow morning." I looked at Xia Yushan's sparkling eyes. Suddenly, I was really pleased with my impulse from last night. And there's also the execution. Xia Yushan nodded. "I don't even know where my in-laws live." I smiled. "Then get to bed early." Xia Yushan turned off the light. The bedroom was enveloped in darkness. We lay flat on the bed. My bed isn't very big. And with Xia Yushan added, I was lying flat, nearly hanging off the edge of the bed. Sorry about that. I used to sleep alone. The bed is a bit small. She was about to shift to the left to avoid squeezing me. Just after speaking, I suddenly fell into a warm embrace. This is just right. I gently stroked Xia Yushan's slightly stunned body and comforted her. "Just relax, it's only sleeping. I want to do something." After a while, Xia Yushan spoke weakly. "Really?" I nodded and said, "I'm waiting for you to take the initiative. We don't have any emotional foundation." It was already great that she didn't refuse to sleep next to me. As for the obligations of a couple, after getting the marriage license, Xia Yushan seemed. She didn't seem like someone who would refuse me either. I want to put the initiative in her hands. I don't want her to regret it. The bedroom returned to silence. After growing up, Xia Yushan had slept in the same bed with someone else. My heart couldn't calm down for a long time, until a faint sound came from beside me. Only then did she gradually calm down. She fell into a deep sleep. The next day, when I woke up at 6, Xia Yushan lay on the bed in a daze for a long time. She slept for nearly 8 hours yesterday, and she fell asleep in less than an hour after getting into bed. She glanced at her husband sitting beside her, who had just gotten their marriage certificate. For a moment, I didn't know if it was because of the day before yesterday, or because I had barely slept for 3 hours last night, or if it was because of him. When I woke up, Xia Yushan was no longer by my side. Xia Yushan was already in the kitchen making breakfast. When I came over, she was setting the breakfast on the dining table. "You're up so early." She looked up at him and revealed a smile. "Sit down and eat." After saying that, she turned and went back into the kitchen to get chopsticks. It was the first time I saw such a bright smile on Xia Yushan. Her previous smiles were somewhat vague. They were not as dazzling as today's. Xia Yushan sat down and handed me the chopsticks. Sitting properly, she began to eat. I curiously asked, "Are you very happy today?" Xia Yushan's gaze fell on me. "Thank you. I slept for almost 8 hours last night. Upon hearing this, I suddenly felt some sympathy. It must be the pressure. Don't work too hard. After breakfast, we tidied up a bit and got ready to head out. We bought 2 boxes of seasonal fruits and some gifts at the fruit store. Although I delivered it yesterday, it's still the first time. It's still important to be somewhat courteous when visiting someone's home. We arrived at my parents' house at 7:30, entering the community gate while holding the gifts. As soon as I walked in, I saw Aunt Wong exercising downstairs. Xian came to my parents' place early in the morning. Aunt Wong stared at Xia Yushan. "Oh, who is this?" I smiled and greeted her. "Good morning, Aunt Wong. This is my wife." Aunt Wong was taken aback for a moment. She remembered that Xian's girlfriend was not the one who came to pay New Year visits every year. Xia Yushan also greeted her. "Good morning, Aunt Wong." Hearing Xia Yushan greet her, she had long since forgotten about the previous one. Open black lens bracket, smiling gently at Xia Yushan, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, not bad, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, Xian has good taste, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, your daughter-in-law came to visit you early in the morning, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, mom and dad must be so happy, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, you guys go up quickly, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, I waved at Aunt Wong, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, waved and went upstairs with Xia Yushan, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, after getting on the elevator, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, I finally laughed out loud, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, Yushan, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, you're quite likable, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, you are definitely more likable compared to Luo Yuding, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, although they are all rather cold, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, but Xia Yushan is very attentive to my matters, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, Xia Yushan lightly smiled, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, are you complimenting me? Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, I smiled, nodded, and said close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, I originally wanted to go in directly by entering the code, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, but it's Xia Yushan's first time visiting, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, so I had to go through the process and rang the doorbell, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, come, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, as soon as the door opened, my dad was stunned at the door, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, my mom asked, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, who is it? Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, Xia Yushan greeted them, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, good morning, mom and dad, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, my dad moved aside and smiled at his wife, close black lens bracket. Your son and daughter-in-law. My mom put down what she was holding and ran over. Seeing us, she couldn't stop being happy this morning. Come in quickly. Once we entered, my dad spoke up. Didn't you buy gifts yesterday? Why did you bring more today? Xia Yushan said with a smile. I can't come empty-handed on my first visit. My mom poured a cup of tea for Xia Yushan while asking, have you had breakfast? I responded. We already ate. Have you eaten? My mom said with a smile. We have eaten. If you had been any later, we would have been on our way out. Xia Yushan didn't want to waste her in-law's time and interjected. Mom and dad, I have classes in the morning. I need to leave soon. My parents nodded repeatedly. Oh, good. Let's sit down for a meal when we have time. The 4 of us sat for a while before getting up to straighten up the floor. I looked at the direction where my parents' car disappeared and couldn't help but smile. Then I checked the time and said, it's just past 8. You should be going to school now, right? Xia Yushan took out her phone, glanced at the time, and said casually, then I'll head to school. Be safe on the way. After bidding farewell to Xia Yushan, I drove to the coffee shop. I also bought a big box. I brought the chocolates to the shop and distributed them to the staff. I've always had a good relationship with the staff. It might be because we are of similar ages. Boss, why didn't you come to the shop yesterday? I smiled and said, I went to get my marriage license yesterday. One of the staff was holding a chocolate. He was about to pop it into his mouth. No way, boss. Is this wedding candy? I nodded. It's a treat for you all. The staff were all very excited. Is it true or not? Why does it feel like the boss is joking? But everyone thinks the boss is going to marry Luo Yuding. They do look good together. I tossed another chocolate over to them. Of course it's true. The staff caught it with a smile. Then congratulations to the boss. After speaking, he sighed again. I asked with some confusion. Sighing heavily. Another clerk laughed and said, today should be the day that beautiful girl comes to buy coffee. I didn't expect she wouldn't come by 8. He has no beautiful girl to look at. I cleared my throat. No direct translation. Context needed. Come down. I let her show you enough in the shop. After speaking, I patted his shoulder. After finishing her class, Xia Yushan looked at the clock and it was already 11:30. After returning to the office, she sat and rested for a while. Chin Min, a colleague from the same department, also returned. Chin Min felt something flash before her eyes. She turned to look at Xia Yushan, who was rubbing her brow. Her hand happened to be under the sunlight. A ring on her ring finger sparkled brightly. She walked over with a smile. I said, Xia Yushan, what's going on with you? You're already of a certain age. Still learning to wear a ring like an 18-year-old girl? They have always been classmates. They call her professor in public. But this is how it is when no one is around. Xia Yushan opened her eyes. She reached out to look at the wedding ring on her left ring finger. Chin Min reached out and wanted to take it. Put it on me for a moment. I want to see how fun it can be. Xia Yushan dodged a little. This is my wedding ring. Chin Min looked at her with some confusion. Wedding ring. No. Xia Yushan, when did you get married? She looked at Xia Yushan seriously a few times. It didn't seem like a joke. Xia Yushan is not someone who jokes around either. You're serious, aren't you? They have worked together for so long. How did she not know that Xia Yushan was dating someone? And that she even got married? She thought carefully. This ring must have been worn recently. They got the certificate yesterday. A barely noticeable smile appeared at the corner of Xia Yushan's mouth. When you have time, please treat me to a meal. Chin Min was stunned. About how we agreed to stay single together, but you secretly got married behind my back. I want to write a lengthy classical Chinese text to scold you. Xia Yushan casually remarked. Go ahead and write. Let's see your level. Chin Min was particularly curious about Xia Yushan's new husband. I have nothing to do in the afternoon. How about treating me to a meal today? And call your mysterious husband along. Xia Yushan glanced at the time. It's 11:40. I can have lunch with Xian. When she instinctively took out her phone and opened the contact list, her finger hovered in the air in silence. She wanted everything to be secure. But she forgot to get Xian's contact information. Xia Yushan helplessly rubbed her forehead. Chin Min asked. What's wrong? Just call or send a message and ask. Xia Yushan coughed to cover her embarrassment and said. Today is not possible. I need to go back to my parents' place. Maybe next time. I tidied up the desk, grabbed my briefcase, and left the office. Chin Min was still immersed in the idea of a good colleague. Shocked that her good friend secretly got married behind her back. Xia Yushan drove to the cafe. About the newlyweds not having each other's contact information. There's no one else besides them, right? Just like those rented couples. The car parked in front of the cafe. She got out of the car and entered the store. The staff was indeed astonished to see Xia Yushan. This is the first time the beauty came in outside of the time after 8. Xia Yushan wasn't able to directly ask Lu Xian. So she first ordered a cup of coffee and asked, Is your boss not in the store? There was no response for a few seconds. One staff member spoke up. Our boss left for home 5 minutes before you arrived. Xia Yushan thanked them. One of the staff members joked. Our boss is getting married. Xia Yushan raised her lips in a smile. I understand. After the barista handed her the coffee, she casually picked up a piece of chocolate that the boss bought in the morning. Here, I'm giving you a piece of chocolate. Let's consider this a perk from the boss's wedding. Thank you. Xia Yushan took the coffee and also received a piece of chocolate. It seems I need to bring some wedding candies when I come next time. She turned around and left the store. The employees in the shop began to discuss. It seemed like they were imagining an annual drama. They seemed to favor this beauty even more. She seems better than Luo Yuding. When Xia Yushan got home, just as I was changing my shoes, I looked at her in confusion and asked, Why are you back? Xia Yushan smiled awkwardly. I actually thought about having lunch with you since I had no plans at noon. I raised my eyes, feeling a bit puzzled. Then why didn't you call me? She didn't finish her sentence and fell silent. Oh, I remember now. It seems we don't have each other's contact information. I chuckled a bit. What kind of thing is this? Xia Yushan took out her phone. Give me the phone number. I read out the phone number. After saving it, Xia Yushan called me. My phone in my pocket rang. I casually saved it as well. Label it as Yushan. Xia Yushan tapped a few times on the screen. I received another friend request. I added all the contact information. At this moment, Xia Yushan asked, Do you want to go out to eat? I nodded and said, I'll change my clothes. In the afternoon, let's go to your parents' place earlier. It's not good to be too late. I got ready and came out in about 15 minutes. I walked up to Xia Yushan and asked, Is this okay? Xia Yushan nodded. But, actually, it's fine either way. Her parents won't put on a face. As long as she likes it, it's all good. However, it's clear that I really care about this. Once in the car, Xia Yushan asked, What do you want to eat for lunch? I waved my hand and said, You choose. I'm fine with anything you like. Xia Yushan picked a restaurant with a nice atmosphere. After entering and ordering, I glanced to the side. I was taken aback by this glance. I saw Chu Wanner and Luo Yuding sitting across from her. Chu Wanner and I locked eyes, slightly startled. She stared in our direction for a few seconds. Luo Yuding's voice was cold and harsh. Lu Jianding's voice was icy and sharp. What are you looking at? Chu Wanner quickly blocked her line of sight, regaining her calm. Yet, she hurriedly poured her a drink. It's nothing, just drink more. Luo Yuding looked at her in confusion. Just a few minutes ago, Chu Wanner told her to drink less. Chu Wanner coughed. Let's eat. But she glanced my way, her brows slightly raised. Xia Yushan also spotted her at a glance. The woman who argued with me, Luo Yuding, and the one sitting across from us. Xia Yushan asked softly, Are they related? I shook my head. It doesn't matter. We'll just continue with our meal. In fact, Xia Yushan had her own motives. When the door opened, I saw Luo Yuding. But she acted as if she hadn't seen me and came in with me. They're married. So why can't she show up openly? I briefly introduced her. The one across from Luo Yuding is named Chu Wanner. There's also a Zhang Yu. They are both 2 years older than me. They are all good friends of mine. Xia Yushan nodded and said, I remember. I thought for a moment and added, I haven't told them that I got married. Next time, let's have dinner together. Xia Yushan smiled and said, Sure. Next time, I'll treat them to dinner. I looked at her and smiled. You please. I'll pay. At this moment, the waiter brought the dishes. I picked up a piece of fish and placed it in her bowl. Let's eat first. Chu Wanner has no interest in eating with Luo Yuding right now. Her thoughts have completely drifted to my table. She guessed that the woman must be Miss Shaw, whom I mentioned earlier. Seeing me serve dishes to Miss Shaw, Chu Wanner couldn't help but feel sentimental. So this is the act, huh? Why do I feel like they're acting? Isn't it because of my attitude? If it were a recognized partner of the opposite sex, I definitely wouldn't smile while serving dishes to the other person. So it must be acting. The actors are quite competent. Thinking of this, she suddenly smiled to herself. If Luo Yuding saw this, she would be furious. Luo Yuding frowned upon hearing the inexplicable laughter. Chu Wanner coughed again to cover up. What did you just say? Luo Yuding let out a sigh. My parents called me yesterday. They asked about me and Xian. Chu Wanner became serious. Yuding and baiting. I'm not a wet blanket. I'm not trying to rain in her parade. That means Uncle Lu and Aunt Shen also know. Then you and Xian have no chance at all. I sighed. I called, but Uncle Lu didn't pick up. I also went there last night. The Yin family is at home. Chu Wanner clicked her tongue. I'm not saying this. This is a deadlock for you. If you were a bit better than Xian, there wouldn't be this situation at all. Luo Yuding shook the drink in her cup. Because he won't leave. He will wait for me. These days, I figured out what I'm even competing with him for. I should go apologize. Upon hearing this, Chu Wanner spoke sarcastically. Think about how you treated Ji Yu Chen. And how you treated Xian. Would you hit him because he broke your things? Luo Yuding said coldly. Chu Wanner. That's enough. Chu Wanner shrugged. If I can't talk about it, then I won't. Anyway, it's Luo Yuding who's going to suffer. Honest advice is often unpleasant to hear. Luo Yuding frowned and said to Chu Wanner. It's already broken, so there's no need to bring it up. It's just a lifeless thing. It took away my last bit of hope. My future will only belong to Xian. Chu Wanner felt a bit speechless inside. It's Yuding after all. Once it's broken, it's just a lifeless object. Chu Wanner sighed after a few meals. Being favored makes one fearless. But this time, Luo Yuding might fall into the abyss. She caught a glimpse of me and Miss Shaw getting up to leave. She turned her head to look for a few seconds. Luo Yuding noticed that Chu Wanner had looked over there more than once. This time she turned her head and looked in that direction. She really wants to see what's worth watching. Suddenly frozen, her blood felt like it had turned to ice. Chu Wanner silently faced Luo Yuding. As expected, she was furious. Luo Yuding stood up, her face dark, and walked towards Lu Xian. Chu Wanner called out to her, but she didn't react at all. Luo Yuding forcefully pushed Sha Yushan aside. We were planning to leave anyway. She didn't see Luo Yuding coming up behind her at all. Sha Yushan didn't notice and ended up sitting down in the chair after being pushed. Instantly, all the eyes in the restaurant were on them. I ignored Luo Yuding and immediately helped Sha Yushan up. Are you okay? At that moment, Luo Yuding's angry voice came through. I'm asking you, what exactly are you doing?